Hey, what's up guys? It's Jake aka Tag, and today we're back at it again with the very best Pekka deck in the entire game, covered by one of the very best, if not the best Pekka player in the game as well. So for our very first matchup, we're going to be showcasing how to beat Lavaloon. As you guys can see, Aaron is going to be rocking Lavaloon with Tombstone and also Barbarians, 2 counters to the Pekka and 2 counters to the Ram Rider. So definitely going to be a tough matchup for Ivan here. Ivan is not going to be cycling the Pekka very aggressively unless he knows that his opponent does not end up having the Barbs or the Tombstone and cycle. So I asked Ivan, how do you play this matchup? Because personally, this is one of the harder matchups for me, and obviously, I don't really play Pekka at this level. So Ivan's #1 tip was do not cycle the Pekka aggressively unless you know that your opponent doesn't end up having any counters in hand. So that means that he's only going to be cycling the Pekka in double elixir in the back after he defends. So in single elixir, he will do that if he identifies his opponent's deck and he knows that his opponent doesn't end up having guards, barbarians, tombstone. They can't have any counters in hand, because if you cycle Pekka opposite lane when your opponent drops a lava hound in the back and they have 1 counter, they net a +4 trade if they have guards, and it's just really bad for you. You can't really come back from that. So generally, that's what he's going to be doing. He applies aggression with the bandit as his primary favorite thing to do, because guess what? A lot of times you're going to need the Ram Rider on defense against the balloon and lava hound. He'll just end up cycling cards in the opposite lane, like he'll end up cycling the bandit opposite lane whenever he sees the lava hound in the back. And he'll end up cycling the Pekka in the back in double elixir primarily when he ends up having an elixir advantage after defending. So that's what you're going to see right here. He's actually going to go for a bandit opposite lane, and he's going to actually apply aggression with that, and he's going to save the Ram Rider for defense here if he needs to. He's going to end up going for a snowball here to knock back the Mega Minion to make sure it doesn't get extra hits, so he's able to keep his air units or his anti-air units alive. Keeping the Baby Dragon alive was pivotal, so then he's able to have a huge counter push with the Electro Wizard, the Baby Dragon, and the Ram Rider. Unfortunately, his opponent has Barb, so he's not really able to do anything. His opponent sauces out a good luck, expecting him to win the game right there. But yeah, no, his opponent BM'd and then it didn't happen. You gotta love when that happens. If there's anything to take away from this game, besides the tips and tricks, you gotta appreciate when your opponent BMs you and then you just remain silent and still are asserting dominance. So yeah, Ivan just played this game super well, as you guys can see. Applied aggression opposite lane with the bandit, made sure that he did not go in for the Ram Rider because he wanted to save that for defense, potentially against the balloon, and he ended up going for a snowball to make sure that his opponent's Mega Minion was not able to kill any of Ivan's defense. So he goes Pekka in the back. That's what I was talking about before. Only time that you're obviously Pekka is if your opponent doesn't have any counters in hand, or you drop it in the back after successfully defending, because you're going to be up a little bit of elixir, and only in double elixir. He doesn't do that in single elixir. So that was one of the things that I personally never knew. I thought that you would want to go Pekka same lane sometimes, and I've seen a lot of other pro players just go same lane with the Pekka. You just don't do that. You end up only doing that in double elixir. You never start off in single elixir. You just try to focus on defending and applying light aggression with the bandit. So as we can see here, he's going to go in for a Ram Rider, get a lot of damage on the left-hand side, because his opponent did not end up having a great counter in hand. He didn't have barbs, so he was really focusing on defense with the Ram Rider, and then he also got offense afterwards. So the conversion is quite seamless there. Also, he's going to go in for a bandit, because guess what? His opponent doesn't end up having the Tombstone cycle. He's going to have to drop barbs into a poison. Really well played again. So everything that Ivan is doing right now is super calculated. He's played this matchup probably a million times. He's played Pekka way more than anyone else in this game. So I love looking at people that know how to play the matchup because they've played it so much. They've memorized what they need to do. They know all the interactions, and everything that he's done right now is textbook. So if you guys want to learn how to beat Lavaloon, just rewatch this gameplay, look at the tips and tricks that I gave you there right there, and honestly, you're going to be well on your way to mastering this deck archetype if you just look at Ivan's gameplay. And I'm honestly super happy that he came on the channel because it's already the first game and I already learned like 2 or 3 things. So let's go right on to the next one, and hopefully we'll learn even more. So for our next matchup, we're going to be covering how to beat Graveyard Tornado Tombstone with this Pekka deck. So Ivan gave us 2 tips with this matchup. So the #1 is if you get the poison value, take it. That means if your opponent ends up having a Tombstone, an Ice Wizard, and a Dark Prince next to each other, it's probably great poison value, and you can always take that, and then you're going to have Elixir advantage to defend. So that means you end up having a Snowball and you end up having Barb Barrel, and those are 2 ways of phenomenally cleaning up skeletons that accumulate, so your opponent will never be able to get a significant amount of damage on you if you have the Elixir advantage. So if you take the Elixir advantage from poison and offense, obviously their graveyard push will be weaker, and you'll have more Elixir to deal with that. And you're obviously going to get damage on offense because you're going to hit the tower, so it's generally worth it. That means that you only do that when you get the Elixir advantage and when you actually get value. You don't really want to do it when it's just an Ice Wizard there. You don't poison that because then they graveyard. They have the elixir advantage, you lose. So you need to be very mindful of that, and that doesn't give you free reign to just play offensive poisons all the time. Secondary thing that he said, the main way that you're going to be winning this matchup is firstly playing defensive and poisoning on defense against the graveyards, usually, and starting a Pekka in the back when your opponent overcommits and when you're up elixir. So if they can't punish you, you start a Pekka in the back. And then what you end up doing is you stockpile a lot of baby dragons and ram riders behind that, and then you're able to eventually break through. So baby dragon has a lot of splash, coupling with the Pekka that slow rolls in the back, allows you to build up a really big push, and then when the ram rider breaks through, your opponent really can't do anything because then that's enough damage to generally just win the game by poisoning after they just continuously defend. So basically all you need is one good Ram Rider Pekka push. Obviously if your Pekka eventually gets a hit, the game is pretty much over. Another great thing about this matchup is they only end up having Tombstone to distract your Pekka. Because the Ice Wizard, it's a one-hit kill, right? They don't really have bait units. So they need to have that Tombstone alive. If you kill the Tombstone with the Ram Rider and you kill the Tombstone with the Baby Dragon, obviously the Pekka is going to get a lot more value. The Bandit's going to get a lot more value. But definitely you guys are going to see him stockpile as he gets an elixir advantage with a Pekka, and then he builds up a push, and that's how he's going to win the game. That's his win condition. And he's not really doing that early on. He's making sure, hey, my opponent just cycled an Ice Wizard. He doesn't have Graveyard in cycle. He doesn't have any means of punishing me. And he just cycled Ice Wizards, so that means that he's not going to have a great defense against the Pekka. This is probably the best way of starting my push. He's also going to end up going in for the Bandit, same lane as the Dark Prince, because it nullifies the charge. Very well played there. He's going to go in for the Baby Dragon, as I said before. If he kills a Tombstone with that, or eliminates the Skeletons, he doesn't even need to kill a Tombstone. Then his Pekka is going to get so much more value. He's going to go in for the Poison, so that was another thing that I was talking about earlier. Key tip. Always go for the poison when you get that amount of value. He's hitting the Ice Wizard. He hit the Skeletons from the Tombstone. He unfortunately wasn't able to kill the Ice Wizard, but the Ram Rider is actually locked onto it, so he was able to kill it. So everything is working out super, super well. He made sure that the Tombstone had to be dropped super high, because if it was in vicinity of the poison, it just dies. So everything that Ivan has done right now is super calculated, and he's been super patient. One of the things that you guys are going to see in this replays, or this sequence of replays, is how patient he is as a Pekka player. I don't think that there's a Pekka player that I've ever watched that is super patient like this, and every single move that he does, I feel like he's not wasting elixir, which is just incredibly, incredibly skillful. So, he's going to start a Ram Rider in the back again, and he's going to start a Baby Dragon as well. So Baby Dragon plus Ram Rider, as I said before, is a great combination, and this is how he just wins games against the Graveyard players, because Tombstone just doesn't do super hot when Baby Dragon kills the Skeletons, and the Ram Rider breaks through them. So Ice Wizard's on defense for his opponent. He knows that the Baby Dragon should be able to kill the Dark Prince, and he doesn't actually have to respond at all, so that's another great move. A lot of other people would overcommit. I know that Dark Prince after the buff is really scary, so yeah, it's hard to know sometimes after a card gets buffed whether or not that you have to drop units or not. But Ivan knew. He's going to end up dropping a Baby Dragon again, and he's starting to Pekka in the back when his opponent couldn't do anything about it. And he's going to end up poisoning again, because he ends up having Bar Barrel. He has an elixir advantage. And obviously, what is his opponent going to do? Go Graveyard opposite lane on the full HP tower? No, you would have to grow Graveyard on this lane that he actually has a whole bunch of damage, and that's right into Ivan's push. So he theoretically can't do that because there's units blocking his pathway. That's another great way of looking at it. Hey, I might actually get back to poison by the time they has enough elixir to poison Graveyard Maid. Because Ivan is actually back to poison right now after he cycles one more card. If his opponent goes in for Graveyard, he can't do anything. As a Graveyard player, I've always seen like Big Spin and Big O. They've always gone in for Graveyard on offense just so that their opponent doesn't end up having the potential for playing offensive poisons. So as a Pekka player, if your opponent doesn't go for the Graveyard, and you have the elixir advantage, and you can keep up the aggression, as you see Ivan do constantly. He's poisoning whenever he sees a Tombstone, because he knows that he can defend. So he's going to start the Pekka again. He's going to limit his opponent's potential of playing aggressive again. And then he's going to start up a push, because the Pekka is always the first unit. Pekka is the slowest unit. It allows you to build up more elixir. It allows you to field more units on the map. He's going for the poison again, because guess what? There was no Graveyard. He has ability to do that. And his opponent ends up going in for no counters to the Pekka, because guess what? Tombstone just isn't in hand. Or it was now, but it's just it was gone in an instant. So yeah, there's not too much that his opponent can do. His opponent BM'd the entire time. I feel like it's just it's a theme here. There's a lot of BMers that Ivan has faced so far. He's going to end up going for the Pekka again at the river to make sure that his opponent doesn't cross the river. If his opponent doesn't cross the river, then nothing is able to tank for the graveyard. And if that happens, then the skeletons are going to get shot at by his tower. Therefore, nothing really is able to occur from his opponent. So, 16 seconds remaining. He wins the game. Very long and drawn out battle. Very patient by Ivan. Much credit to him. So let's move right on to the next one, and hopefully we can learn a little bit more. So for our next matchup, we're going to be showcasing how Ivan combats a Golem Lightning user. So there are two Golem decks that are really tough for any Pekka player, and it's Golem Lightning or Golem Inferno Dragon, and this is one of the ones that is super tough. So I'm really interested to see how he navigates this. Let's go jump right into it. There are two tips that he gave me right out of the gate. Number one is he likes playing this really defensive. Number two is he doesn't really like end up going in for any type of Ram Rider early on if he knows that his opponent ends up having NATO. You don't really want to go and give them early King Tower activation if he knows that he's not going to get a lot of damage from it. So those are two things that are really solid. Another thing that he told me is if he ends up going in for a Golem, you don't want to pressure opposite lane with everything that you have. You only want to end up going for a Bandit or a Ram Rider, or you want to switch it up and accommodate their card cycle. Every single time it's a little bit different depending on what they have, but the main thing is you don't want to pressure with everything that you have because then you tower trade a lot of times and you don't have Elixir for the Pekka, and it just becomes a really sketchy and dynamic game where you want to be in a little bit more control, obviously because you have the Pekka, which is a counter to Golem theoretically, right? So if you have the control deck that counters it, what you want to end up doing is you want to play a little bit more defensive, and then after you end up getting Elixir advantage, then you're able to punish him a little bit more. He's going to end up going in for a lot of Bandits opposite lane, and he's not going to end up going for Bandit Ram Rider too often, in this matchup at least. Another thing that he told me is something that I didn't know personally. This was very cool. He ended up going in for a lot of Ram Riders on defense, and you're going to see it in this matchup as well, opposed to going in for Electro Wizard sometimes. And the reason being is if he goes in for Electro Wizard, easy lightning value, it's a lot of damage on the tower, and it just feels really, really bad. So if you go in for a Ram Rider, your opponent's probably not going to go lightning that, and it's going to provide decent value on stunning everything and slowing that down so that the Golem doesn't get to your tower, and it doesn't end up getting that death damage. So it's super cool. Another thing that I saw later on in this game is he's going to end up going in for a separation with Electro Wizard in the middle and the Baby Dragon off to the side. That was something that was really cool, and it kind of stunned me that you could separate all your units like that and have the forethought to just space out everything so well. So he ends up going in for a Golem in the back. Let's see if he ends up going for the Pekka left lane and ends up probably going in for a Bandit in the right-hand lane. But he doesn't really want to apply too much aggression on the opposite lane because if he does, then he probably just ends up losing the game outright. He's not going to go for Barb Barrel, Baby Dragon, and everything, all of his allowance. He's not spamming his entire bank account as his opponent. As you guys can see, he's playing super calculated. He also preferred to go in for the Pekka before he went in for the Bandit. He went in for the Pekka first because, first off, he wants to get back to his Pekka as soon as possible. Second off, if he just goes Bandit, then his opponent might end up responding to the Bandit first. Sometimes your opponent will end up going for a Night Witch in the left-hand lane towards your Pekka. And if they drop that immediately, so then the bats are going to get behind the Golem, they don't have any Elixir to deal with the Bandit, and then the Bandit gets a lot more damage. So he went in for the Pekka first, hoping that his opponent would overcommit with like a Night Witch in the back or a Lumberjack, so then maybe he was able to potentially get even more damage. That's something that I just picked up on right there. That would have been a lot of value if his opponent fell for that. Small tips and tricks like that are something that I would never do, but it's really cool because now in the future I'm going to end up doing that all the time. He ends up going for the Pekka yet again. He has that back in cycle. He's going to end up going in for an Electro or Baby Dragon soon. It's going to be interesting to see what he chooses to do. He ends up going for Electro Wizard, and then he poisons. Okay, so Lightning comes down. That's what we were talking about before. It's a little bit of an issue when your opponent's able to Lightning that. Obviously, his opponent actually didn't hit the tower, so that was a little bit sketchy. But he's going to end up having Snowball in cycle, so he's definitely going to end up snowballing that back, I presume. And actually, he doesn't even need to. All right, cool. I thought you would need to do that. He's going to end up going in for a Pekka again. He's not going to go for a Ram Rider. He's not going to end up going in for a Bandit just yet. He's going to wait. He always goes in for the Pekka first. That's something that you're going to see time and time again. He goes in for the Ram Rider same lane. So that's something that we talked about a little bit earlier. He actually likes doing that in a lot of scenarios so that he doesn't give lightning value. And the Ram Rider actually makes sure that his opponent has to drop a lot more. It actually gets damage on air units like the Baby Dragon and the Mega Minions, so then they don't provide counter push with the Golemites. And he's just doing super well. Unfortunately, his opponent ends up having the Furnace, and unfortunately the Baby Dragon kind of whiffed. I hate when that happens. I hate when the Fire Spirits get on top of whatever unit I drop. And it's unfortunate that the Baby Dragon took a little bit of damage, but he's still doing very, very well. He's going to go Ram Rider opposite lane. And he knows that his opponent doesn't end up having a tornado now, so he could apply aggression without very much fear. So he starts the Pekka yet again. He's going to wait for that Mega Man to die before he spams or does anything in the opposite lane. And he's just going to relax a little bit until he figures out what his opponent wants to do. He's going to go in for the bandit, as I talked about before. Super important to do that, but you got to focus on defense because obviously the bandit can get counteracted by a high-level player that ends up going in for the bar barrel at the appropriate timing. And now he's spaced out his units here. Look at what he did. He ended up having his baby dragon really far off to the side and then his electro in the middle. That's what I was talking about at the very start of the match when I said he spaces out his units super, super well. That's something that I know that a lot of people just don't do. And one of the reasons why he has Electro Wizard in the middle is because its range is a little bit further. So you're able to space it out a little bit more than you're able to space out the baby dragon. If you had the baby dragon in the middle, it would be a little bit more sketchy. So I really liked how he had the Electro Wizard just because he could space it out and make sure that the Electro Wizard is attacking it from a distance. He goes opposite lane there and gets a ton of damage and takes out the tower. Honestly, the main thing to take away from this is just the defense. Obviously, the offense is pretty straightforward and easy to do. Defense here is not super straightforward. And there were just a lot of defensive tendencies that I was able to pick up from Ivan in this match that I did not know before. So let's go jump right into our last and final game. So because Lava Hound is one of the most challenging matchups for a lot of Pekka users, we're going to be covering this matchup twice today. So thank you, Ivan, for sharing another replay against Lava Hound Balloon, one of the most detested decks in the entire game. I know you guys hate playing against it. It is so infuriating. It is definitely not a party when that balloon is ravaging your tower. So looking at this game, looking at these decks, I just don't understand what Matten's running. I mean, look at it. It's going to be arrows, it's going to be a lot of bait, and it's going to have miner. I applaud the innovation, but I know that you guys know, as ladder players, you guys are secretly raging right now. What is this deck? And this is 17 in the world. Ivan is playing against this. So it's definitely really frustrating. We're going to see how Ivan combats against a deck that is quite mysterious. So right out of the gate, what we ended up seeing, we saw a bandit opposite lane. He doesn't go in for Ram Rider, doesn't go in for a lot of spam. He just makes sure that he goes in for minimal elixir investment to draw out counters. He baited out a Goblin Gang. He ends up going for a Pekka here because the Goblin Gang's not on cycle. He knew that he was able to defend the Electro Wizard. He didn't have Bandit to defend the Electro Wizard from the miner, so he had to go in for Pekka. He knew that he could get counter push because he already baited out one of the defensive bait cards, and he got a lot of value on defense to offense because he was able to know that his opponent just didn't have a lot of answers in cycle. So at worst, his opponent had one more counter in cycle, and he knew that he could obliterate it with the Baby Dragon and his other spells coupled with Electro Wizard because he was able to save that and just build off of that. Super, super well played. He only goes in for Pekkas, as I said before in the very first game of the day. He only goes in for Pekkas when he knows that he can get a huge amount of damage. And he had to defend that miner. He had to make counter push if he wanted to win this game. He goes in for a Ram Rider because he knows that his opponent just doesn't end up having tombstones, so he can get damage for free. And guess what? He went for Minion Horde, but Ivan's out here like the happiest man on this earth with a Baby Dragon and Snowball to just shut down that. Unfortunately, actually, the Baby Dragon decided to have just a sad panda moment and latch on to the miner there. And unfortunately, it just took a lot of damage, but he was still able to take the tower with that one last dying belch of justice. So he's going to start the Pekka in the back. That's what we were talking about before. He starts the Pekka back only in double elixir, unless he knows that he can get a lot of damage in single. And he's going to end up starting the Electro Wizard, same lane as this Lava Hound Balloon. I want to see how he navigates this and defends this, because this seems like it's incredibly difficult to defend. He's probably going to end up poisoning this soon, and that should be able to defend everything. Miner comes down, though, so this is a little bit more sketchy, because the Lava Hound's not going to die. He ends up going in, supporting the Pekka with the Baby Dragon, because he knows his opponent only ends up having Skarmy. And he's probably just going to forfeit the left-hand tower soon, because that's a losing battle. That one's gone. Baby Dragon's going to get a lot of damage on the right-hand side. Snowball's coming down. Poison also comes down soon. So, man, that death damage is going to be a lot. Oh, man, maybe he's actually able to defend this. Maybe he's going to prove me wrong, actually. Ram Rider is going to be stunning. If that Ram Rider was able to just, like, push the miner away, he would have been able to defend that tower. Honestly, guys, he didn't even make a bad play there. He could have defended that if he just had a little bit better of a push there. So that's crazy. It's really crazy. He's going to start a Pekka in the back. His opponent's going to start spamming him left-hand side. And Electro Wizard comes down. I love that placement, guys. So that Electro Wizard is placed there because not only is it going to kill the balloon, but it's also going to waddle behind the Pekka, giving him superb counter push pressure. So he's going to go in for Ram Rider plus Baby Dragon plus Pekka. You guys see this in the graveyard matchup. You see it now. That is the ultimate push with this deck. You want to have the Pekka, you want to have the Baby Dragon to kill all of the bait units, and then you want to end up having the Ram Rider to just go behind everything and just collect that free tower damage and secure the W as your win condition. So that is the fearsome threat. A lot of counters to the Ram Rider are going to be baited out by the Pekka, like Tombstone. And obviously the Baby Dragon coupled with the Pekka to kill all the swarm units allows your Pekka to just get through everything a little bit quicker. With the Snowball plus Electro Wizard on defense, you're able to kill minion hordes and everything. So a lot of times you're able to use the poison on offense. I mean, this deck is just super well-rounded, and as we can see, Ivan just played extremely well on defense. He's played this deck a lot more defensively than I did traditionally, and there's a lot of takeaways that I'm going to start incorporating into my gameplay. So a huge shout out to Ivan for coming on the channel. He's made me a lot better as a Pekka player, and I don't know about you guys, but whenever I learn a lot about a deck, it makes me want to play the deck so much more. So a huge shout out to Ivan for coming on the channel, revealing a lot of pro tips and tricks that I didn't know personally. I feel like we would have never got these on the channel without him. So make sure to drop him a fat follow on Twitter and give him some love. Make sure to let him know that we appreciate him. And also a huge shout out to Ivan's Team Inception, Ivan's Clan Bulgarian Gang, and one of the best players in the entire world, one of the top tier Pekka players, Bat Ivko. And if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to let me know by saucing me a fat thumbs up on the video. And if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel already, what are you doing with your lives? We are so close to 100,000 subscribers, and it actually blows my mind. Thank you guys so much for that, and I'm so amped up for it. So I personally learned a lot today analyzing this top tier Pekka gameplay. Let me know down below in the comment section what deck and what pro you guys want to see in the channel for the next time. Thanks for watching, thanks for chilling with me, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Peace out.